Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Richard Kaplan. I'm here with Browne Greene. Today we're doing War Stories with Browne Greene. Before I get started and do the introduction, I'll just remind everybody, first off, Beverly Hills Bar Association. Hopefully everyone here is a member. If you're not, there's various members of levels of membership that you can join at, and please join. Secondly, your MCLE certificate for this will come via email, hopefully within the next 24 hours. Today, I will have the opportunity to spend an hour with Browne Greene, who's the founding partner of Greene, Brolé, and Wheeler, a legend in the really civil litigation, personal injury field. Browne graduated from George Washington University and also the law school. He was also a JAG. He's going to tell a story regarding that. He has tried and won the most multi-million-dollar verdicts in California. He was a past president of the Consumer Attorneys of Los Angeles. He's a two-time recipient of the California Consumer Attorneys Marvin E. Lewis Award. In 1984, Ralph Nader presented him with Consumer Advocate of the Year. He's in the Consumer Attorneys Inaugural Hall of Fame. He's on the board of directors of Edgemar School for the Arts, board of directors of Little Dolphins Preschool and Seven Arrows Elementary School, a judge at the Shakespeare's Festival. He's a volunteer with Big Brothers of LA, and there's lots of other things I could tell you about Browne Greene, but right now I'm going to introduce Browne, who wants to make a few comments before we get started. So Browne, have at it.
Yeah, I just want to say to all of you out there, lawyers, all or about to be or wish to be, what a wonderful, wonderful life it is to be a lawyer. 60 years ago, right now, I was getting out of law school in Washington, D.C. Little would I know the adventures that lay ahead of me. The great cases, the winning cases, the losing cases, the challenges, the ups, the downs, the sharing experiences of being in a partnership, the political insides and the challenges that come from that. It's all there in this wonderful life of being a lawyer. And I never would have imagined it, quite frankly, because I wasn't a good law student. I wasn't anyone that graduated at the top of his class, nor anywhere close to it. And I look back now and I just give thanks that it all happened. And that it happened to me. Later on in life, I picked up so much, but I look back on something that happened before that, and maybe your experience as well. And that is that there can be an educational experience completely separate and apart from law school, college, whatever. In my case, it was being an outdoor salesman that changed my life. When I was like in undergraduate school, I was a fuller brush man. I would knock on doors in the community in Washington where I was born and raised. I learned how to sell brushes out of a suitcase, and it changed my life. It told me that I could be persuasive, that I could show to people a likability. They would listen to me, and that I could actually sell and get beyond rejection. And above all, I could come back from rejection. If a woman wouldn't let me come in and show her my wares, I would go to the next door. And that's what you do in life. You come back from whatever the defeat may be or the disappointment. And that's a very big learning point. I would share to you, Shakespeare put it so well when he wrote about hope. True hope is swift and flies with the wings of eagles. It makes gods of kings and of meaner creatures kings. What do we do in life without hope? What do we do with it? In the lawsuit business, when you take a case, every case has a problem. You go into it with hope. You go into it with a sense of adventure. You go into it hoping that everything works out. It isn't that much different, actually, in everything else you do in life. Friendships, marriages, neighborhoods. We work and we live with hope. And it's something that imbues us and aids us every time we consider a challenge. And challenges are always abounding around us. Go ahead, Richard.
Thank you. And thank you for those motivating, great words. And so with that in mind, in 1991, was the Rodney King beatings, the 1992, were the LA riots. And of course, now we're seeing what's happening with George Floyd. So we thought we'd open up with the case that you did, that an incident happened in 1998 regarding the Miami surgeon who was stopped and detained by LAPD. And for the end, I will say, ended up you getting a $33 million verdict. Tell me about that case and how you came into it.
Well, the case involves a wonderful man from Haiti named Dr. Angelo Goose. He came to America to get his education, went to the right schools, did the right things, was a terrific student, went to Yale Medical School on a scholarship, but had to work his way through, in addition to that, by working in the laboratory cleaning test tubes. He was always a motivated, wonderful person. He made it through all these schools at the top of his class, became a female urologist. Female urologists are the folks who take care of women after cancer surgery. There's only 30 of them really qualified in the world. They all come out of UCLA. On the day in question, Dr. Goose was invited to come back to take part in a seminar at his medical school. He flew out here from the University of Miami Medical School and rented a car at LAX from Budget Rent-A-Car, totally like it is for anyone that's renting a car. He puts his money down, he gets his papers, he drives up to the exit window, they look everything over, and they release him out onto the highways. Little did he know, he was being released with a stolen car, a car that had been listed as stolen, completely negligently, completely untrue, but one that would expose him the next night to driving downtown in LA on a Saturday night to the LAPD in the area of Rampart, and that whole thing that was going on with Rampart PD at the time. So he sees behind him red lights abounding. They order him off of the Hollywood freeway down onto the 10. And he's splayed out by order by cops with guns to lay flat down on the freeway. And the freeway itself, the 10, is completely blocked off. 2 helicopters are spraying lights from above. 10 cop cars stop, and the police officers get out with their guns drawn. They were treating him like he must have been some kind of a felony perpetrator of whatever mayhem one could expect. He doesn't know what's happening. He hasn't done anything wrong at all. He's got his leasing documents in the glove compartment. And he says back to the police officers who had him laying face down on the freeway at 1 a.m. in the morning, "What is this all about? This is a rental car, Budget Rent-A-Car. Take a look in my glove compartment." They won't look. One of them refers to him and says, "Sir, you, boy, are in Los Angeles now. Listen to us." So what do? They treat him like a black man in Los Angeles in 1998. 2 officers come up and put their knees in his back and handcuff him forcibly, injuring his wrists. While he's down there, they then go ahead and treat him worse by tightening these hand grips so that they injure his wrist worse. Finally, he's picked up, he's put into a police car, taken to Rampart, put into a cell, and is finally told why he stopped. And he tells them to just look in the glove compartment and see the documents. They do. 2 hours later, they release him. They release him so that he can be taken to LAX and put on a plane and go home, which is what he wanted to do. When he gets home, he can't really practice medicine to do surgery because his wrists are injured. The long and short of the case, as it comes to me months later from a lawyer in Florida, I filed a case against both Budget Rent-A-Car for what they did and taking and mistakenly listing a vehicle as stolen when it wasn't. And then the LAPD for police misconduct in the handling of this individual. So these two defendants were the defendants against us in a trial that happened in 2003 in Central District. I tried that case in front of a judge who was totally in favor of the LAPD, and every step taken in the case evidenced that. At the end of the case, what happened? It was a wonderful result for us. Why? Because Dr. Goose was a likable, believable person who stood behind what he had said. He did not look like he was severely injured, but his wrists and hands were determined to be injured, and it would basically be a situation where he could not do surgery. So we were able to maintain that he had a huge loss of earning capacity in the future. The LAPD and Budget Rent-A-Car both fought this against each other and against us. At the end, the jury came back and awarded us a verdict of $33 million. What was that? That was the amount of money for negligence against each one and the causation as far as injuries to the client and the loss of earning capacity and such in the future. The end of this story was not really the end, but the middle of the end of it all was the judge taking away the damage verdict and leaving the liability verdict, causing us thereafter to have to deal with an appeal and the aftermath. Ultimately, the case was settled for less money. The client has remained a wonderful friend from a distance. He's still with the University of Miami. He cannot do surgery, but he and his family are strong. They have two wonderful sons. He's married to a Haitian lady, Marie, and they have a wonderful marriage. And he's been a great member of the community in Miami.
Let me ask you, Browne, I know that's not your typical personal injury case. How did you find it different doing a civil rights case, dealing with the city, dealing with discovery, taking depositions of police officers? Is that any different?
No, not really. Basically, you're talking negligence. The case was founded on negligence. They were negligent, the Budget Rent-A-Car, just for listing this car as being stolen. And then, of course, when it was released at the gate, the car was not listed even under their records as stolen, and yet they released it. And then, of course, the LAPD and the way they treated this individual and then injuring him without necessity when he had told them who he was and how they could have simply looked at the documents instead of rushing to a conclusion that was, of course, untrue, that he was somehow a Black person who was doing something wrong. When he was a medical doctor, dressed like a doctor, he had just attended a seminar at UCLA Medical School and was dressed that way. But the racial implication of that in 1998 is just what we saw in Minneapolis last week.
And did you find the officers, were they trying to cover up? Were they credible in the trial? Did they take responsibility?
Oh, no, they didn't take responsibility. They basically blamed Budget. They basically said that our client wasn't injured, that this was a phony case. And the lawyers for the city attorney's office basically took those positions too as well. They both came away way down way down the pole from the jury, who found both of the sets of lawyers to be incredible.
And, getting ready for the trial, how confident were you going in? I mean, were you worried? Did you, at that time, there were verdicts, the police were, finding defense verdicts in those cases.
Yeah, I was worried. I had just done a focus group on that case the week before the trial. The focus group did not come out for us well at all. In fact, it looked like we were going to lose the case. So we had to refocus the case and do things differently, urge different countering moves, which we did. And I found out that our client was the kind of a person that we could have in the courtroom with his wife, and they would be a very, very steady group to give the right impression at all times. So we did that. And the jury picked up on that. They loved that.
And let me just kind of segue to this focus group. Do you use focus groups on most of your trials nowadays?
Yes.
And you find that you will change strategies after seeing how a focus group gives an opinion?
Yes, you can do that. You can find not only that you need a new focus, but that your focus is right where it needs to be. You can find where the jury or the focus group likes your client or sees critical things about that. They'll take a look, for example, at your graphics, what kind of blow-ups you're using, and what your approach would be and how you should change it. And I've used that usually with great effect.
And I'm thinking just kind of a timing thing. You graphics then, how have your graphics changed through the years? Have you adapted how you do that in a trial?
Oh, yeah. Oh, of course. I can think of the days back when we used to do butcher paper, handwritten stuff right in front of the jury, including final arguments. Now things are PowerPoints. Now things are run with graphics people. You now usually have someone with a graphics company in the courtroom with you, running your exhibits. It's all much more expensive, much more involved, but yet much more productive as well.
So just a reminder to everyone out there that if you go into the Q&A, you have any questions, we'll make sure we try to get to them. So I'm going to kind of segue on. In this case, you said, the city lawyers really took a position against your client. They weren't, in favor, of you in any way. But then down the road, the city comes to you to represent them. You want to tell me about in the tobacco case? I want to segue to that one.
Yeah. In 1996, the whole issue of cigarette litigation was coming to the fore. At that time, there had not been one case where a dime had been paid by the big tobacco companies. They had been successful in going to Congress and lying in front of Congress with the presidents of the tobacco companies denying that there was any evidence that tobacco was even addictive. And we know that at that time they knew and had in their pockets their own laboratory work that showed that they knew everything about tobacco. And they were trying to redirect the public and the world with what the truth was. And then the insider came out, a person from the industry who became the great witness of the truth as far as this, and that changed things. So there became a movement for governments, state, local, county, to sue big tobacco for the costs of ongoing medical care, cancer, heart, all the other terrible diseases caused by tobacco. And in our county, we had the LA County supervisors who hired our firm to represent LA County to do this. The case would involve an allegation that cigarettes, tobacco, had damaged taxpayers and people here, and the city and state and the county had huge financial obligations because of it, and would in the future. So we were brought in on that case to represent the county and its taxpayers, millions of them, and to take this case on a contingency fee and to do it and sponsor and finance the case as far as all costs. The county wanted to pay no money. They wanted no obligation in case they lost. Why? Because tobacco had never, ever gone down in front of any case or any jury. So we took that case on and we had a contingency fee. The case went for months. Ultimately, it was part of a national settlement. It was the largest settlement in the history of the United States as far as civil litigation, to the tune of $240 billion paid out by Big Tobacco for the cost of medical care in all the jurisdictions of America. So we could walk up to our clients, the county supervisors, and say, here we are. We brought you here $3.3 billion for our county, all of which would be paid out to the tune of $150 million a year for 25 years. That's still being paid out today. And the money comes in and is used to pay for indigent folks who cannot pay for medical care. It's one of the best investments the county's ever made. But the people that cut the deal with us said that we could not have the contingency fee that we bargained for. We had to have to do something else. Why? It was way too politically hot. We could not do that. The newspapers, the LA Times, Time Magazine would barbecue these politicians. We saw that. We agreed with them. So it was agreed that the attorney's fee issue would be arbitrated by arbitrators against Big Tobacco. And at the end, Big Tobacco, the tobacco industry, would pay the attorney's fee. And that's what happened all the way across the country. And at the end, that's how it was resolved. And we too are still being paid out years later.
And when you worked with that, you were representing the county, but were you involved in the overall class action with the team of lawyers across the country?
Yes. Well, we were all part of the same overall effort. We helped each other. We assisted each other in all aspects of the tobacco litigation, including the consumer interest end of it, and in terms of the fact that tobacco could no longer advertise. All of that was done as part of this litigation. So it was an enormous change for the benefit of the consumer and the health of the safety. I mean, instead of having as many people and teenagers especially starting to smoke while in high school, that's been cut down to like 60% down. Now, there's still too many kids that are picking up tobacco, but it's a lot better than where it was.
And the cost, you said you went up front costs. How much, if you're willing to say, were you guys in this, if it didn't work out?
Well, let me just say it was more than $1 million. Plenty, but I'm not at liberty to go into it, but you can safely say it was that. And at the end of it, it was all worth it.
I'm sure, but it's, if it didn't work out, that wouldn't have been too good for the firm.
No, that's right. Remember the class action, the book, the movie, the class action, where the plaintiff lawyer took one of these environmental cases and lost his entire shirt. Never could recover.
It does happen. It does happen.
Yeah.
It's amazing that you guys managed to get this settled. So how often, just curiously, in a case like that, especially now you couldn't Zoom, were you actually having meetings with people flying around with the group, the class lawyers, to strategize? How was that taking place?
Oh, yeah. Well, before we got into it, I took a trip to Minnesota and to South Carolina to talk to two sets of lawyers that I knew well that were already involved for their states. And we shared that information. So that just began a process of sharing and joint mutual benefit between us. And that worked out for everyone's effect.
And are you aware, did most of the lawyers on this for other municipalities take it on a contingency and end up in the same position you did at the end?
Yes. They were all contingency fee cases. Yes.
And yes, nobody was paying a third of this settlement.
Well, not that I know of. Right. Right.
No. And I guess as you said, it's understandable. The press would not take into that, or the public for that matter.
No.
And that's one where you had to make a decision. I guess, you could have litigated that. You had a valid contract, correct?
Yeah. Well, yes, but then greed would not have worked out to the public's interest. Look at the end of it all. It worked out for all. And at the end of it all, the county is still getting money tax-free, literally, attorney's fee free for the future and for all these past years. Very proud of that.
That is something that, yeah, you should absolutely be proud of. So was that, we kind of talk about it in a case, an aha moment. Was it the whistleblower coming out that really was the moment that you guys knew we're going to do well here?
Oh, yeah. The whistleblower that was made into that great movie with Al Pacino, you may remember it, The Insider. Yeah, that changed the entire tenor of tobacco litigation because he had the information that had been lied about by the tobacco industry. He knew what the truth was. He revealed all of the studies done with learned treatises and all about addiction, infection, heart disease, cancer, all of that was known, and they were still denying it in front of Congress. So that just changed everything.
And at that point, the litigation became more of a negotiation, I take at that point?
Yes, I think so, yes.
That's
Yeah.
quite an amazing the story. Speaking, since we're so into the police misconduct situations that are happening now so often, I think you also had another case against the Torrance Police Department. You talk about that one for a moment?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, that was a case that happened approximately 30 years ago. There was a young man named Kelly Rostello, who was riding a motorcycle, doing everything right, going home from school, and a police officer for the Torrance Police Department, and his name was Browne Greene, was driving, having been alcoholed at a bar nearby, and was under the influence when he drove his car across the double line and struck the motorcyclist, killing Kelly Rostello and leaving him on the road. Soon thereafter, the Torrance Police Department, Browne Greene's police department, came out and investigated this and wrote a report determining that the dead boy was responsible for his own death, covering up the whole alcohol incident part of this, because they knew that he, Browne Greene, had this problem and he took care of a fellow cop. Okay. As part of this whole experience, we took this case and we put it into litigation. This was back when suing police departments was not exactly something you did every day of the week. But in doing this, we tried to get and did get a court order allowing all citizen complaints against police officers to that department to be produced. They revealed that out of 450 complaints about different kinds of conduct, there had never, ever been one disciplinary action taken by this department. And among many things that were there at that time, there was all kinds of racial epithets. I can still see, police reports that were written where they reported somebody was DND, driving while black, kind of thing. That's still something that you see across the country in various of these cases. And so I was seeing, and I could see the reality of the fight for racial justice relative to something such as, and yet the Kelly Rostello case was a white boy who was killed by a white officer. And yet all of this came out on an oblique sense, and you could see it. And it was so real. We took that case and went to trial in front of a jury. It was fought all the way by the police department. And we got a great verdict against the police department. Again, it was a case where there was strong evidence that we could bring. We had a great national figure come in from police authorities to testify as our expert against the Torrance Police Department. Johnny Cochran, was an expert witness for me on this case because he had been the former assistant district attorney, and he could lay down the whole pattern and conduct of prosecuting one of these cases from the standpoint of the police department. So, you know, it's all part of the history in your memory bank. I think back having Johnny Cochran in that case. I remember the trial judge asking the jury during voir dire if they knew of any of these expected witnesses. And we would name the witnesses, and Johnny Cochran's name came up, and the entire courtroom put their hand up. Who's Mr. Cochran? Oh, Mr. Cochran, one of the greatest lawyers from our community. We're so proud of him. The next juror, it was that kind of thing. He was that big a person. And this was, by the way, before the O.J. Simpson trial. This is back when Johnny Cochran was an astute, effective lawyer on both the criminal and civil side, before that whole O.J. Simpson thing happened, when he became the most famous lawyer in America.
So let me ask you on this case, I've got a little curious on some of the details. So how soon after the incident were you hired?
Probably within a month. The brother was a lawyer in Denver, Colorado, Tim Rostello. He came out and interviewed lawyers. He went to two of the more famous lawyers at the time. Dave Harney was one. And they wouldn't take the case. No one wanted to go against the police department. They came to me. I took it. There we went.
And you talk about the officer had been drinking. How did you guys prove that when you got it a month later? I mean, that's kind of a tough lag time there. How did you come to that conclusion?
It's called a great investigator, getting behind everything, finding what the truth is, you know, talking to police officers. And Browne Greene was well known to be an alcoholic. He had even been through AAA, okay? So it wasn't hard to figure out what had happened that day.
And did you actually manage to figure out where he was coming from, where he'd been drinking? I mean,
oh yeah, yeah.
And did he take the stand in the case?
Oh, he had to testify. We put him on the stand. And remember, this was a civil case,
right?
So we named him, and we called him as a witness. Sure.
And was he? Do you know? Was he ever disciplined after the fact for this?
Not as of the time of the trial. They were going to protect their flanks by not doing that, because that would have been admissible.
Wow, that's just a crazy story. That, I mean, after the jury came back and there was just no discipline. And I mean, did he continue as a police officer? Do you know? Or
well, he was still with the department at the time of trial 2 years later.
And
yeah,
of course, the DAs never prosecuted him.
Yeah. Oh no. No.
And did you ever try to refer the case to the DA even after the verdict, or there was
no?
interest?
Not really. I mean, we figured that they had already looked this over. They had turned it down for strategic reasons, and you know, what are we going to do with that?
All right, that's quite a story. Quite a story. Let's. Do you want to talk one more case? We can talk. Do you want to talk the Aaron Andrews case, which is a rather interesting one?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that was the case that our firm had. Bruce Briolet tried that case in Nashville, Tennessee. Aaron Andrews is the beautiful blonde who is also a sports reporter, you know, for ESPN. And she was basically videoed in her hotel room in Nashville, Tennessee. Illegally, of course. And she received a phone call after she'd gotten out of the shower from a friend of hers in Chicago who said, Aaron, what are you doing right now? Do you know where you are? And she said, yeah, I've just gotten out the shower. He said, I know. I'm looking at you on national television right now, and you're nude. Okay. So what had happened is a stalker had followed her to this hotel. He had called the hotel and gotten her room number, which is totally illegal. I mean, Marriott should never have ever revealed that. So what he did is he got the room number. He went up and he buttonholed the hole in the door and put a camera in it. So he could literally camera her while she was in there. So she was absolutely thunderstruck that millions of people had seen her in this situation. All right. So the case went to trial against Marriott. Bruce Boylett, the great trial lawyer, happy to say my partner tried that case approximately 3-4 years ago. Verdict came down for $56 million in her favor. And why was that the amount? Bruce used the numbers that were estimated by the tracking service concerning how many people were watching TV and seeing what that friend of hers saw. And the figure that came down was 50 to 60 million. And he asked the jury for $1 for each one of those observances. And so the verdict in Nashville, which was a state record, still is, was based on that.
And was there negotiation?
I'm sorry, forgive me. Go ahead.
No, I was just wondering, it seemed like the liability was pretty obvious. I mean, there obviously were some negotiations beforehand, but you couldn't reach a settlement on that?
Oh, no. There never was anything serious, no.
Okay.
It's a very conservative state, hard place for a plaintiff to try a case. But it helped a lot, the publicity that happened while the case was in trial. I mean, it was on national TV all the time. And it didn't help, or hurt, I should say, that you had a gorgeous blonde like Erin Andrews with a story like this.
And I take it, obviously, she testified, which must have been very moving.
Oh, yeah. She's a very, very believable victim. Even though, you look at her, you say you got everything going for you. Yeah, but she also has this going for her. And this is something that's holding her back.
I bet. And so how did you guys just get involved? I'm just curious, again, it was in Tennessee, but they just came to you because reputation wise that you were the go-to firm at that time?
Yeah, there was a business lawyer who got that case and referred it to Bruce. Why? Because he had cases against Bruce. And that's how we get most of our cases are from other lawyers. Because how many lawyers are going to be prepared to go to trial against big forces and know what to do, and have the resources to do it, take the chance, really have the guts to go after it. That's what it takes, because you're not going to win them all.
No, and that kind of leads to another question I have for you. Do you have a loss that sticks in your mind more than others?
Oh, sure. I tried a blindness case for a little girl against a drug company. Our allegation was that the drug Motrin by Johnson & Johnson was known to create a hideous side reaction called Stevens-Johnson syndrome. And there had been cases, and there was no warning whatsoever put on the Motrin pack when it was sold at your local pharmacy. So I tried that case in Malibu, and we gave it all we had. We spent a lot of money on it. We had the best experts going. The jury came back against us. On the jury, by the way, this is like nothing I've ever seen, was the trial judge's wife. That's right. Let me repeat that.
Was
on
that
the jury.
Judge Myra back in the day?
was the judge, the judge's wife. And there was no peremptory challenge, nor was there a cause challenge because he was related to her. And she voted against us.
Wow.
We
Was
lost
that
that
Judge
case.
Myra
That was
in
a
Malibu?
real-
Was
Pardon
that
me?
Judge Myra in Malibu back in the day, or do you, who
No,
was it?
no, I was Judge Sarmiento.
Oh, his wife is a prosecutor.
Yeah, she's a city attorney. Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
on my side, I've worked with her on more than one occasion.
Yeah.
You said that early on you had a case as a JAG that kind of helped shape you. Want to tell us about that?
Yes. When I was 25 years old, I went into JAG. I had a military obligation. In those days, we had the draft. And instead of going in as a private, I decided to take a commission and go into the legal arm of the US Air Force. And they sent me to France. And while I was there, there was a case that we had where one of our airplanes, a B-66 recon bomber, strayed over the Iron Curtain into Czechoslovakia and was shot down by the Russians as part of a war game. And all of the pilot personnel, the bombardier, the navigator, the left wing, right wing people, they were all brought back, released by the Russians. And when they got back to our base, they were promptly put into trial, alleging they were negligent in the loss of this aircraft. And therefore it was going to basically take away their careers, flying status. So I was appointed as one of the trial counsel for the navigator. And so I was the junior guy on it, and there was a senior lawyer on it. And we had a team with all the other flight personnel. So how did this happen? How was it that this plane leaving France, heading up to Scandinavia for a training exercise, where basically a B-66 with these huge, enormous recon cameras could open up at 30,000 feet and shoot a railroad track and pick up the dust on the railroad track? How was it that they lost that airplane? How was it that it strayed to the right instead of going straight from France up out over the North Sea to Scandinavia? So we had a theory that we developed, and that is that the radar on this plane that was controlling the flight, because it was cloud conditions and they had no VFR flight. Basically, we had to get a test to prove our theory. We requested the Department of the Air Force to deactivate a warplane to test it so that we could preset it radar-wise and see how it reacted. That was granted to us, and we proved that that's what occurred. So this would be something that no one could have known would have occurred, that the radar would preset, correct to the left, therefore correcting to the right, and to the right's going to be Czechoslovakia instead of going due north. So we tried the case. We had our experts testify. It was all top secret. It was, the courtroom was ringed with military personnel to keep it top secret. At the end of it, we won the trial from the group of officers listening to the evidence. But when it went up to the Department of the Air Force, they decided to reverse the findings and to basically take flying status and therefore the careers away from each one of these flying personnel. Now, this might have been the greatest thing that happened to them, because this would have been in 1964. And if they had kept their flying status, they were set to go to a place called Vietnam. And Vietnam was just heating up at that time. So anyone leaving France or Europe is going to head right out to Vietnam. And the returns back from being shot down, like John McCain figured out what happened to him. But They kept their status, and I've always wondered whatever happened to them.
So
Had no idea.
no idea. So
Yeah.
it's some clients you stay in touch with, some you don't. That's
Yeah, right.
the way it works. We've got about 10 minutes left. I don't know if there's any questions. You can put them in the Q&A box. I know you wanted to share one story about the Beverly Hills Bar Cuba trip. If you want to do that for a few minutes, and
Yeah,
I'll see
well,
if-
I'd love to. Yeah. You know, I want to extol the Bar Association. They have a wonderful travel seminar program. I took advantage of it. 5 years ago, I went to Cuba. That was before Trump took over our diplomacy relative to restoring, Cuba to the nations. And Obama had opened up Cuba so we could go there and have a wonderful week with the Bar Association, 16 other lawyers, and come back after having a spectacular time. All of that done by the Beverly Hills Bar, providing this to us to share. I mean, I'll never forget. It was just wonderful. Yeah, that's opportunity. Can I give another Shakespearean aside on that? Opportunity. Okay. There's a great line that Shakespeare wrote about opportunity. He wrote this: there is a tide in the affairs of men, which, if taken at the flood, leads on to fortune. We are awake on such a tide, and we must take its tide or forever lose its vantage. So in life, you really have to know and see what an opportunity will be, because you may not see it again. And it's that way with trial cases, taking cases, being able to judge what you want to take in a case. Every case we see has problems. You turn them all down because they have problems? No, you can't. You'll never take a case. There's no perfect case. There are better cases, but no perfect case. So you take those cases and you make them an adventure. That's what they are.
Are there any cases you've turned down that you've seen other people have taken and they've had successes?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to remember those though.
Yeah, that's the one that got away.
The one that got away, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I'm very grateful. Let me just make this last point, if I may. I believe in gratitude. One of the real strong points that I have that I found out about is the attitude of gratitude. When you have the attitude of gratitude and you can give thanks for your losses, for your friends, even your enemies, for your divorced other side, you have a whole different view of life. You look different. You are different. Gratitude is an armor that leads you into battle and about life. It takes the sting out of things and allows you to have a new day. So don't forget about gratitude and the attitude of gratitude.
Well, I think that's great advice. We've got a little bit left. I don't see any questions popping up, so I'll just ask a few of my own. I kind of mentioned the aha moment in a trial. Is there one in your career or a couple that maybe jump out at you on a case that maybe wasn't going well and then something happened that changed things?
Oh yeah, I remember a big case that I thought was a perfect case. And in trial, I saw something happen I hadn't planned for. My client getting impeached for not telling the truth. I got this case about a month before trial, and there was a woman who was run over in a crosswalk in the San Fernando Valley by a school bus and crushed. Legs, arms. I mean, you had clear liability. You had a great injury. It was a nice little Italian woman. And she was in a wheelchair, and the case is coming to trial. I remember going to a settlement conference, and the indication was they should pay a lot of money for this case. Well, it never really ever got put together. But finally, there was a $4 million offer on this case. So we go to trial in Van Nuys on this. And on the witness stand, the lawyer on the other side, a very well-known lawyer at the time, his name is John Carr. He was a movie star who went to law school and became a trial lawyer. He was a star in South Pacific. He played the young lieutenant. He won the Tony Award on Broadway.
Wow.
And here's a guy that became a trial lawyer after becoming a famous actor. And here he is in court, and he has my client on the witness stand and cross, and he's saying things like, now, do you ever go to the mailbox? Okay, do you ever walk to the mailbox? Now, my client is saying she can't walk. She's got to always be in a wheelchair. And she says, oh, yeah, well, but the questions were such that you knew he's got something in his pocket, okay? So the next thing that got, and this is the one that got me, he says, did you ever go to a furniture store on Ventura Boulevard called the Shamrock and sit right there inside the door and enjoy yourself one day? So, hey, look, that's too specific. There's something going on here. So I get her off the witness stand and I said, Maggie, what's going on? Have you gone to a furniture? I says, oh, Mr. Greene, yes, I've been. I said, and how about your mailbox? You've gone outside your mailbox. They've got a film on this. They know what you've done. Well, sure enough. So now what do? The thing that saved it was the defense doctor had not testified yet. And although she's caught lying, which is, that's an absolute killer, usually, all right? I got the defense doctor on cross-exam to agree, no matter whatever happened to her, walking to a mailbox or sitting in a furniture store, she suffered terrible injury, correct? Yes. It's permanent injury, correct? Yes. Even if she struggles to walk to a mailbox, is she in pain to do that? Oh, sure. Will she ever be free of not being able to walk without pain? No. So there's something left. Jury comes back, 2 days deliberation, $4.5 million verdict. So, sometimes you get lucky.
Yep. Well, sometimes you're just smart enough to be, you make your luck. We have one question here. In what way do you think the legal industry has declined over the years? If you think that at all.
Well, just by turning on TV and looking at these TV advertisers, the lawyers that do this, I think that's a real decline. I think when we pick juries and we hear them talk about lawyers that they don't like, it's that. It's looking at the people that get on TV and they're claiming that they're such great lawyers and so forth and so on. Bring real, what's the word? Humiliation? How about disgrace? No, disgrace, but let's not do that. How about embarrassment? Let's stay with embarrassment.
Do you find that also the advertising, but also TV shows change what the expectations lawyers have? Jurors have when they come to a case?
Sure. Yeah. It's all, there's so much emphasis on what we do and what lawyers do. We live in a world of controversy. If you're a lawyer and you're not controversial, you're not doing what you should be doing. We live in a world of controversy. We got to be able to expect that. Expect the jokes that are good or bad about lawyers, okay? The fact is that we're respected. And, this goes all the way back to John Adams and the story of John Adams in 1775 with the Boston Massacre case. When he went to trial and defended the Boston redcoats who had killed 5 people in the Boston Massacre and defended them without a fee because they deserved a defense. The greatest trial lawyer of his time. And it's what we do.
That's right. It's not always a popular cause. One more question. Do you agree with the saying that cases are won on opening statements?
Yeah, to a great extent. They're also won on voir dire. Before opening statement, you've got voir dire. You got the right to ask questions and get the right jury going and thinking where you want them to be.
And do you use experts on voir dire?
Oh yeah, jury pickers, sure, yeah. And you learn a lot about which questions to do by your focus group.
So you use the experts as well as the focus group going into your trials.
Yeah.
Now, did you always do that when you were young and a newer lawyer?
No, I didn't. No, that's something that after the years, I don't think there was an industry, Richard, back way back when I started 60 years ago that would be receptive to or providing, jury consultation provider.
Well, I think we're almost at the 1:30 break up. Actually, there's a question I will do before I do you use. Okay, the question is, do you use voir dire to find which jurors to eliminate or which to keep? Some lawyers do the latter and identify the strikes for the other side. What do you have a specific strategy?
Oh wow! What I do is I go in there and ask questions, and I'm looking for people that have an open heart and an open mind. It's just as simple as that, And they can be of different stripes. Usually, I want to find minority people. They're much more understanding of victims, and whether or not it's a male or a female or young or old, it all depends.
It's all about the person. Well, I think we've hit 1:30, so I'm going to say thank you. I think everyone had an opportunity to listen to you, to get to know you better, to see what a thoughtful, charismatic person you are, what makes you such a great trial lawyer. And we thank you. And it was a great program. And thank you, everybody, and have a great afternoon.
Okay, and good luck to everybody.